Hello, welcome to the 150th episode of the Martial Truth Podcast. Who'da thunk it? I know I didn't think it. I figured I'd be one and done. One podcast and never do another one. And for some reason, people keep watching it, and I'm much appreciated by me, but I'm as shocked as anybody else, all right? For this 150th episode, I know I said I'd do a live Q&A, but we're going to push that back a little bit because Andreas Quast had a suggestion about interviewing me for the podcast. So today the tables get turned and I'm the interviewee. Andreas Quast will be the interviewer. And he said, told him he could ask me whatever he wanted to ask me, whatever his interests were, he could ask me. And that's what he does. So I hope you enjoy this one. If you do, please, again, click that like. It takes you 2 seconds. Just hit the like button, all right? Share the podcast, all right? Consider becoming a monthly member. Definitely subscribe if you're not already subscribed, all right? Tell your friends, all right? So here's Andreas Quast interviewing me. Hope you enjoy it. All right, so today, folks, we're going to have a little bit of a switch. So Andreas Quast is here, but instead of me interviewing him, he's going to interview me. So don't know what to expect, don't know what questions he's asking, but let me once again welcome Andreas to the Martial Truth Podcast, where I'm turning over the interview duties to him, and we'll get started right now. Andreas, how you doing?
Hi, Mike. Thank you very much. Yeah, doing good. This is an awesome idea because you are a great interviewer. You are very relaxed and you're giving space to people to talk. And actually, you have so much to tell and such a great history in various martial arts and continuously over the decades that it's really good for your viewers and for your channel people and everything, and for yourself maybe to get the opportunity to not just listen and ask, but to tell what you think is important. Okay.
Well, I just want to say I've been interviewed for a couple other podcasts, and a couple of people have said to me after I was interviewed on those podcasts is that they don't think the interviewers really knew my background. Like they almost seem surprised, like at certain things. Like they didn't bother to look and say, "Well, what's this guy's background?" before they interviewed me. So I know you know my background a little bit better, so this should be fun, and I'm looking forward to it. So fire away.
Yeah, fine. Well, let's first talk about your channel.
Okay.
So, because even though the names are familiar with people, like you know the names of the people who are in Okinawan karate, who are in this part in Kobudo, and but without the visibility, it stays kind of again, anonymous, right?
Right.
You're anonymous, and so I was watching your channel, and now I just want to. When did you start exactly?
So I think the channel we first started it in 2009, and how it started was I had moved
Oh,
the new I had moved the new dojo in New York, the one where it is now, and I went down the basement and I had these crates of VHS tapes, and I looked at them and I was like, what am I going to do with these? Right. And then I realized I started looking through them and seeing what was written on them. And I was like, wow, I got to preserve this stuff. There's a lot of important historical stuff here. So that's how it initially started. I was just pulling clips off these VHS tapes and putting them on the channel. And what started happening was I started getting messages from people saying things like, "That's my teacher's teacher. I never thought I'd get to see my teacher's teacher do anything." Then they reached out to me from Japan, Kaminoda Sensei, a very famous Jodo sensei who studied with Shimizu Sensei. Some of his people reached out because I posted video of him and Don Drager training in New York in like 1970. He had never seen the video, but he remembers filming it. They asked me if they could have a copy, which I burned a DVD copy and sent it off to them. So, so it was that kind of stuff that started it. And then when I moved out to Arizona, I decided to start doing a little bit more with it where I started putting up more video of myself. And then I was putting up video of obviously my Tai Chi master. He's nice enough to let me, when he comes in for workshops, he gives me copies of all the video he films at the New York and Arizona workshops. So I have stuff I can put up. And I started doing my own stuff, showing different things, and people started asking, and then someone suggested I should start a podcast, which I had never ever, the thought was never even in my head. And it was one of my first police partners. He reached out and said, he said, you have a lot of real fighting experience, and he said you know a lot of different martial arts, so you can talk to these different guys. It's not like you'll be caught off guard or you won't know what to say. And initially, I was like, I thought it was a crazy idea, and then I started thinking about it more, and I said, oh well, I like to talk. Let me give it a shot. And I did the first one and thought that'll probably be the last one. And now we're closing in on 150 episodes. So, so that was the
Wow.
impetus of the channel. And my thing is I didn't want to do like, you know, Wing Chun versus karate or, today I spent my day with a ninja. I have nothing against that stuff. I mean, I watch it too and I find it funny. But for me, I just didn't want to do that. I wanted to have a traditional martial arts channel that would, people could, relate to and come to. And, I've been lucky now. I've had some senior teachers like the late Terry Macarone. He gave me footage of Shoshin Nagamini's first trip to the USA. Like he called me and said, I'm only going to give this to you. I want you to post it on your channel. So that's up on the channel. I had
Wow.
someone else who I had video of Tatsuo Shimabuku, the founder of Isshin-Ryu, that no one had ever seen. And he was nice enough to send it to me and let me put it on the channel. And that's something I say every once in a while. Like there's still a lot of people that have VHS videotapes out there, and they have this stuff, but the VHS, it starts to degrade. Like mine, I don't even have them anymore. I pulled everything off it and I threw them out because they were just starting to fall apart. So I tell people, if you have it and you want it preserved, I'll be happy to preserve it on the channel. Just send it to me. I have the equipment here to go from VHS to digital, and get it up there. And even if you have it on film, 8 millimeter, like with Terry Macarone, I paid to have it transferred from, whatever it was, 16 millimeter, 8 millimeter. I paid to have it transferred to a digital. And then what I did was I sent the originals back to Terry and I sent him all the digital copies. So, and then I gave him the credit on the channel. Like I'm posting it, but this is from Terry Macarone's private collection. So that's something I would like to see a little bit more of to preserve this stuff. And again, like, not just Isshin-Ryu, I'm looking for anything, any martial art that, that people have historical footage of. I'd love to share it on the channel just to get it out there to more people. It's funny, I'm trying to think. One instance for sure, someone complained about a video I posted. And they said that was never supposed to be made public. It was filmed at a seminar. And I said, fine. And I took it down.
Mm.
Other than that, that's the only one I've ever gotten a complaint about. And I still to this day don't understand the complaint because the guy in the video looked great with what he was doing. And
Mm.
this idea of, protecting stuff and oh, only I have it. I don't want anybody else to see it. It's a huge problem. It's a huge problem. And I'm not a fan of it. So
Isn't that the
that's
point?
the channel.
Wow. So you are creating a kind of slipstream, a vacuum behind you to spread it out, to take it out from like from the den of someone whose secret it is. And
Right.
I get it. We all have this, and
Right.
but that's a great idea. Really, I like that. And also, it's going to be there for everyone for future years
Yeah,
and
I mean, look,
decades.
long after I'm gone, I mean, the channel will still be up and running. It'll be up and running as long as YouTube's up and running, right? So, you know,
And then it's also a question of personality, I guess, because martial artists are martial artists, right?
right,
And they're good at something and they're not so good at other things.
right.
But you have this kind of triangulation between the mindset, the practical background, the theory, and the normal everyday, guy personality that you can talk to, who is open to communication, which is great.
Well, one of the things I like is that when I started doing the interviews, what I realized was it was really it was really me getting to talk to people I wanted to talk to. So
Oh
like,
yeah.
yeah, so like even though I'm putting them out there, the interviews are out there for the public, to watch them, whether they like them or not. I was like, well, I'm getting to interview these people. I'm getting to talk to these people. So it's great for me. And I enjoy it. I mean, and I learn a lot when I talk to guys, whether it's you, Joe Swift, anybody, Patrick McCarthy, Yannick, all the guys, everybody I've interviewed. I learn a lot from when I'm talking to them, and I'm just having fun.
The funniest thing is that among each other, some of them they wouldn't actually talk that much.
Right.
So you're bringing it together, which would be divided partly, right?
Well,
That
yeah.
makes
Well, what one of I try to do is I try to say to myself, well, I'm not going to play favorites, right?
that's good.
I'm
Yeah,
gonna
yeah.
interview anybody that wants to come on the channel that I think people would be interested in hearing. I want to have them on, and of course, there's always going to be personality conflicts between people, right? But I got to try to stay above that and just be the interviewer, right? No matter who it is. I don't want to play favorites, right? I want to try to bring all these different viewpoints out there, right? Because I think they all have value. So
Yeah.
no matter who it is, they have
It's, it's,
value.
it's not it's not even so much about conflict, but you need a mediator between not
Hmm.
between the people, but some people are just I'm not interested in this.
Right, right,
I'm not into like I don't want to in be involved in that thread or something, right?
right,
I would have something to share or something to say, but
right,
I don't want to. It's to and that's why it's good because you're mediating and you're trustworthy because people notice, okay, if I overstep and become like someone who's pointing too much and so I will be, put down a little bit. And if I'm attacked, Mike will also say, okay, up to here and not further, right?
right, right, right. Yeah, there's been one or two instances where I reached out to someone I interviewed and they had posted something and where I said, maybe that wasn't the best way to put it, you know. You know,
Okay.
and again, just to say, and then the person did say, I think you're right. I think and that's one of the things too. Like, believe me, I get plenty of negative comments. Sometimes people come after me pretty hard. I kind of have a rule now where I either don't respond, or if I do respond, I usually wait a little bit because when you initially read something or hear something, you get angry, right? And then if
Yeah.
you respond right away, you're responding in anger. And I've learned as I've gotten a little bit older to maybe give it a day or two, think about it. And then usually I think about it. I'm like, why am I going to waste my time even responding to this, right? Um, so yeah. And again, like I want a lot of different viewpoints. I mean, I'm not interested. I'm not in any one camp, so to speak. Um, I want to hear from everybody. I think that's the best way. I think we get in a little bit of trouble when we say only this one guy has all the answers, and that's true in martial art. It's true in anything, right? Because then it becomes where it's I don't want to say cult like, but it becomes where it's almost like a personality thing. Like you're worshiping the guy, right? Which I think that's a big problem. I think in modern martial arts, where it becomes, well, I'm with so and so, and he's the best,
Mhm.
right? And I just don't subscribe to that. I think there's a lot of good people out there that you can learn a lot of things from. So, and that's why I try to vary the interviews with all different people.
Awesome. So you're basically using the principle of Jew, the principle of softness, or taking the energy and give the guy a chance. One, two, three. If that doesn't work, you give him an
Yeah.
arm lock. If that doesn't, and so on, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Again, when I do the interviews, I'm not interested in going after the person I'm interviewing. I just don't, I'm sure some people would like that. They'd probably like it if I, went
Oh
after
yeah.
people. But again, that's not, it's to me, these interviews are a conversation. It's two guys talking martial arts. And when I have a guy on that's really well versed in a certain subject, I'll give you, for instance, I just had on Professor Gregory Smits, and he did that interview, right? And that was probably the interview where I did mostly almost all listening because again, the guy was brilliant on the subject he was talking about. And and I was blown away by some of the stuff he was telling me. So like someone like yourself, you probably knew more of that stuff, but a bunch of that stuff I'd never heard of. So for me, I was sitting there, it was great. I was hearing all these different things, and I hope to have him on again because he's got another book that's going to be coming out. So I hope when that one and he said when it comes out he wants to come on again. And so here's a prime example of the interesting things with the channel. So people say to me, "How did you get Gregory Smits?" I said I asked him, right? So someone suggested I interview Hunter Chip Armstrong, who was trained with Don Drager, all right, founded the Hoplology Society. So someone had said to me, "Hey, he lives in Arizona." And I was like, "Really?" I said, "Where?" He goes, "No, so I Googled him and he lives in Sedona, which is about an hour and a half from me." So I messaged him. I told him who I was, and I told him about the podcast. I said, "I'd love to have you on for an interview." And he goes, "Oh, I know who you are." He says, "I've heard it. I know who you are." He goes, "Yeah, I'd love to be on the podcast." I says, "Oh, so I'll drive up to you. I'll bring my lights. I'll set it up. I'll interview you by your school where you train." And I drove up there and I interviewed him, and everybody was shocked. I was getting numerous. How'd you get him to consent to an interview? I asked him. I asked him. And, so again, I mean, I ask a lot of people. Some people come on, some people don't. Some people don't get back to me. But yeah, I'm always looking for people to interview, you know? So,
And you every time you're so extremely well prepared. You're reading the books. You love to read the books. It's visible
oh,
that
yeah.
you say, "Oh, give it to me." That you are like a sponge, still taking everything in, finding like tiny dots to connect and
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah. I mean, I love to read. I mean, and not just martial arts books. I read a lot of different books.
Mm,
But now with the channel, I mean, I have a lot of authors. They're nice enough. They send me their books. So if they send me their books, I read them. Sometimes it
mhm.
takes me a while to get through them. Like I've got a stack right now. I'll read a chapter of one, put it down, pick up another one, read a chapter because I've got so many of them. I'm trying to get through. Um, but yeah, I mean, I'm happy too that the channel can be a vehicle for authors because like I get messages every time I have an author on with a new book. I get messages from guys that's jokingly say, "Stop having authors on because you're costing me a lot of money," right? Because they're buying the books, right? But again, like where are martial arts people going to promote their books? I mean, these publishing companies don't promote them. Yeah, they print them, but they don't really promote them. Um, and the channel's growing slowly. We're slowly closing on 20,000 subscribers, and it's getting out there. And I'm doing a few things to get it out there a little bit more. But one of the things I'm careful with the channel also is I don't want it to become my life, where
Mhm.
I'm sitting out here. Like for a while, I was putting a video up every day, and I finally had to take a step back and say, okay, you
Mm.
got to slow down here. I mean, with the shorts now, there's over 3,000 videos up on the channel. I mean, so there's a lot. And even like the members who I have extra videos up for them, like even some of the members have jokingly messaged me and said, "Hey, slow down. Like, there's slow down. There's so much material." But I'm going to be 63 in September, so like I want to get through all the Matayoshi curriculum, the kata, so it's up there for the members. I want to get through all the Isshin-Ryu curriculum. I want to get through the different arts I do, so the curriculum's up there for members because again, I have some students that only train Isshin-Ryu Karate with me. I have some that only do Matayoshi and some that, and some that do multiple. So I want to get it up there so they have a reference. They have that reference that they can, use. So, but
Okay, you did
it's
that.
a lot of work, but it's a lot of work.
It is.
Yeah.
And also the technology, it's not for everybody. Like
No.
technology from the 80s, 90s,
Yeah.
2010s up to now, that's something chapeau
Right.
in itself. But then again, you have so many styles. But I became intrigued with the jujutsu that you did with the Sosuishi-ryu.
Right.
Sosuishi-ryu. Uh, so since I trained a little bit of jujutsu myself, I have a small eye, for it. And I thought, wow, that's really something. They're using the atemi, they're using strong atemi, things that hurt. I can see the levers they are working. I can see that. There's no gaming. I can see the faults, the break faults. They're brutal. I don't want to be that guy really, because they really and the techniques they are just good. And how did you get into that style within all that Isshin-Ryu,
So,
Matayoshi?
so my first instructor, Dennis Fink, um, I was with him for about 10 years. I made black belt, I guess, after about 4 years. I guess I made black belt in Isshin-Ryu. And every year he would bring down a projector and bring up the 8 millimeter films he had. And he'd show the films of Tatsuo Shimabuku, and he'd show films of Angi Uezu doing the Isshin-Ryu stuff. And then he'd always put on this video of Shitama Manzo, who was 16 years old at the time. That was my teacher. And Yoshimura Sensei demonstrating the Jujutsu kata. And at the end of that is old black and white films from the 60s. And at the end of that, Shisaku Shitama, my teacher's father, would come on and demonstrate the EI Jitsu. And what had happened was I was about 16 years old and Shogun was on, the original Shogun with Richard Chamberlain and Toshiro Mifune. I saw that and I said to my instructor, I said, "Oh, I want to learn EI, swordsmanship." So
Mm,
so this is a 100% true story. He calls Aaron Banks. And Aaron Banks, a very famous martial arts promoter in New York, he used to put together the Oriental World of Self-Defense, which used to be on Wide World of Sports. It was a big thing, but Aaron Banks was a little out there. So he mentioned a guy that was studied under a Japanese guy. So I went to meet that guy. Remember, I'm only 16 years old, 17 years old, and I met the guy, and I didn't get a good vibe. But I got the guy's instructor's name, and the guy's instructor's name was Yoshitaro Otani. So I was trying to figure out how I could get in. Remember, this is 1980, 81. Okay. How can I reach this guy? So believe it or not, I looked him up in the phone book. And he was the only Yoshitaro Otani listed in the Manhattan phone book. So I called him and he answered the phone and I introduced myself and he says, "How did you get this number?" I said, "Oh, it's in the phone book." He goes, "Oh, let me give you the number to call about the classes." I said, "Okay, thanks, Sensei." And he gave me the number. So I started studying whatchamacallit, Musa Shinden Ruiai with that group. And but I kept saying to my karate sensei at the time, I said, "Hey, I really want to learn the jiu-jitsu. I want to learn the jiu-jitsu." So I made black belt and then I was giving him a hard time. So he would never teach it. He was always making an excuse. Oh, blah, 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 whatever. Okay. So then finally he says, "Well, one of my guys who lives in New Jersey, but I don't think he studied with him. I think this guy studied with Fleming." Um, he said, "Oh, he wants to get back into it. So if you drive to him, he'll show you the kata." So I did that for probably a year and a half, and it was one on one. So I learned all the kata, and he was very good. His name was Gary Rowan. He's a former FBI agent. Great guy, veteran of the Vietnam War. Uh, so he was very good, but I just felt there was something kind of lacking in the kata. And then around this time, I also started studying Shindo Musuru Jodo. And then I started getting some VHS tapes that someone would give me that would show other Japanese Koru training and doing their kata. And I said to myself, "Well, why aren't we doing certain things in the Sosui Shitsuru?" So anyway, that's how it started. Initially I was training just one on with him. Then we started a group in New York. Um, and then so I've been teaching Sosui Shitsu probably since 1984 or 85. Um, Went out to Oregon one time with Dennis Fink. Um, Once we got to the kata portion of the seminar, he went in the office and told me to teach it. And I never, in my 10 years with him, I never saw him do the kata. I never saw him do any of the EI. When I left him under, you know, these kind of circumstances, right?
Mm.
He really turned out to not be a very good person, which proved out near the end of his life too. But, and I went to Fukuoka. I sent the headmaster a videotape of me doing all the kata. He said I had a 75% understanding of the art, which I was shocked at. And then I went there and it was just the first time I went, it was just me and him training. And we went through all the kata and then over 2 days. And then on the Monday, he showed me all the EI kata, showed them to me one right after the other. Now I might have already been a black belt. I think I was a black belt in Musa Shinrin-ryu at that time. I had been promoted to Shodan by
So
Takeshi.
it's easier.
Yeah,
It's comparable.
yeah, Takeshi Mitsuzuka. So I already knew how to draw a sword. I knew how to do noto. I just had to learn the Sosui Shitsuru way. I will say the EI Jitsu and the Sosui Shitsuru to me is some of the most combative EI Jitsu I've ever seen. I mean, we kick in it. There's counters where the guy grabs the sword and you pull it out and draw it. It's dynamic EI Jitsu and it's very physical. I mean, so I really like it. So yeah, and to be honest, so I was training when I went in the police academy. It was 1988, so I started training in 1979. So when I hit the streets, I had 10 years in martial arts. So I had 10 years in Isshin-Ryu, and I probably had 5 or 6 years in Jujutsu. And I will say the guy Fink taught a lot of joint locks in Isshin-Ryu. He taught a lot of joint locks, so that was good. And then with the jiu-jitsu training, and then it was just a question of figuring out how to adapt the techniques to the modern situations. And
Mm.
again, that came with time, but once I understood it, it became much easier to control violently resisting people with the joint locking techniques. So, one of the things
Mm.
I constantly say is we still have two arms and two legs in terms of
Mm.
combat, that's never going to change, you know. So, um, so yeah, so the Susui Shitsuru, I think it's a great martial art. I think it's one of the more direct styles of jiu-jitsu in terms of koru. Um, it's interesting because it comes from Takano Uchiru is one of the arts that has it comes from. And when I look at the Takano Uchiru kata, it's just not as combative to me as the ones in the Sosui Shitsuru. And that's not a knock on them. It's just an observation that I feel. And one of my students actually, who's been with me in training in Sosui Shitsuru for a long, long time, he actually went and trained with someone in Takano Uchiru, and he only lasted a couple of weeks. He goes, it just didn't have the same intensity and combativeness that the Sosui Shitsuru had. But
Mm.
it's sadly the Sosui Shitsuru is, worldwide. There's probably only 50 practitioners. It's very small. It's not a lot of people. Um,
Mm.
would love to see it, come up, you know, but it's tough. A lot of the Koru are just disappearing. More and more of them disappear every year. And I know my teacher's still alive. His son is now. When I met him, his son was like 12 years old. So he's in his 30s now, at least, right? So I have thought about going back and visiting the dojo again. Just going back there. The dojo is an amazing place. I mean, anybody that's interested in studying Sosui Shitsu, I would recommend you go to the Sekiryukan in Fukuoka because just stepping into that dojo is like stepping into a time capsule. I mean, the physical dojo itself is well over 100 years old. It really feels like you're stepping into samurai era when you walk in that dojo. It's pretty amazing. So, but and
Awesomeness.
you've been looking at the stuff, so yeah, Atemi is a big part of the school. And one of the things we were taught and told, oh, the Atemi is, some people say in jiu-jitsu, oh, you hit the guy to loosen him up so you could throw him or do the joint lock. But that's
Mm,
not the intention of the Atemi at all. The Atemi is to eliminate the threat. So you hit the guy and you cause so much damage that he can no longer continue to fight. And in real serious cases, it's intended to be lethal. I mean, you're trying to actually, you know, kill the opponent. I mean, it's a battlefield martial art. It's not. It's developed by samurai warriors. It's not a civilian art. It's not interested in our ideas of morality. Its idea is, there's the enemy, kill him. End of story. But yeah, the Atemi's serious. I mean, and we're striking to a lot of different places. So, and everybody thinks, oh, you're always striking to the solar plexus, like when they do the kata, but that's not the case. There's,
mhm.
there's different places we're striking to on the body.
When you have the kick in the air, it goes to the rib or under the rib, or
It
what is
can
it?
go to the rib, like in the one kneeling form where we come up, the guy comes down to cut with the sword, we come up and jam his arms and we kick from Seiza. When we kick from Seiza,
Yes.
like there, when we train the kata, we're kicking usually to the abdomen because we don't want to, in case you hit the guy. But
Yeah.
in reality, we're kicking straight into the groin. Like we're trying to, we're trying to,
Yeah. Yeah.
kick him
So
straight.
this is
And
such a
yeah,
misunderstanding because Japanese people, they're so nice. And then, back 30 years, 40 years ago, it was difficult for normal people to view choreo styles.
right,
And then they heard these stories of Japan, and then suddenly you see it on YouTube, and then they watch it, and then they do Kyokushin or whatever, kickboxing or whatever, and then they say, "What is it? Why is this? What's so secret about this?" And that's a big misunderstanding because they're just being nice and not killing their partner,
right,
right? And you want to train today, tomorrow, and 10, 20, 30, 50, 40 years. And also there's a huge misunderstanding about the Atemi because they are set in most of the schools at the very top
right,
because because people say, yeah, Kyushu, bam, you
right,
strike it, bam,
right,
he knocks down eye, nose,
right,
ears,
right,
something like that,
right,
throat, like that.
right,
So that's not correct because usually the atemi, it's an art because it's not only you dislocate the jaw of a guy or you dislocate an elbow or this or that or you use the like the blood vessels or the this here or the nerves ends and this but you also have to be able to bring him back to life,
right,
and that's what they're all missing today.
right,
They do, yeah. I can sucker punch someone until he
right.
drops down, but yeah, th- anybody can do that. But the secret thing and the complexity of it all is underrated, and people. That's why the choreo are dying out. Well, so few people are willing to go there and go that mile, going there and trusting the style,
Right.
the tactics of the style, and just continue. Because the Atemi, for instance, I found him so intriguing. And when you told me, oh, we have this point, shofu, I said, shofu. Yeah, that's that Matsukaze, because you have these different kinds of uh, pronunciation in Japanese kanji. So you can pronounce them like this and like that.
Right.
That's a regular standardized point, but the other points, I never heard of them. And
Right.
I have studied the points of dozens of different schools, and I cannot make it out. So I really wonder what that is. And it would be so great to have a diagram of the school, but there's no.
So when I first did the forms with Shitama Sensei in Fukuoka, um,
Hmm.
the second form, Munagarami, the opponent comes to cut the neck with the sword. You come straight down his center line and stop the cut, and you strike him,
Oh, yeah.
and you
Can
strike.
I just a
Yeah.
second for the
Right.
viewers?
Right.
So the thing is, when they do Atemi, it's not like zombie attack something, but they're using for friendliness. They're using a kodachi, wooden sword.
Right. Right.
But what it means is that someone with a machete is trying to kill you.
Right.
So your atemi has to be good. I'm putting this out for the listeners
Yeah.
later, so you
Yeah.
understand that.
Yeah. So when I was originally trained in the kata, we were being taught this idea of blocking like this, where the hand comes like this, and you see that a lot in karate too.
Mm,
But the problem was is I started having the students actually try to cut my neck. And you don't have time to bring the hand all the way over here and bring it back when someone's trying to cut your neck with a sword quick. So I
mm,
realized that the actual initial movement is the hand has to come in straight. So it prevents the sword from ever getting into play, like you're stopping it early. Now, when we initially teach it, we teach the stopping of the sword and then you punch. But
mm.
eventually, those two movements have to be at the same time. It has to be instantaneous, right?
Right.
And then the thing with that second form munagarami is so you strike, but we're striking to the liver. So you're striking just under the ribs to the liver, right? Because
Uh,
you're coming from the side. So that's the most
left.
yeah left
What
up
is it?
into right.
Is it a hook?
Yeah. Well, in Sosuishi-ryu, our punch is always this way. So we always punch this way. So it's funny. In Isshin-Ryu, I punch vertical fist, right? In
Oh,
Chen style Taiji, I punch with a twist punch. And in
oh,
Sosui Shitsuru, we punch this way. So even
oh,
if you're doing a rising punch in Sosui Shitsuru, it's always the palm is faced up. My belief in that is again, this is being taught to military guys. You want to keep it kind of simple. And when the palm is
mm,
up when you're making a fist, the elbow is down, which creates a good solid alignment to generate power.
mm,
But the interesting thing with like Munagarami, the second technique is I then stand up and I strike the person in the side of the neck. So I still have their wrist, their arm, their elbow comes against my body, and this comes across. It's like a cutting strike.
mm,
And then
mm,
you seize the uniform or the kimono, and now you have them in a choke and you have them in an armbar. And then from there, you throw them. So, everybody thinks, oh, that's exactly how you do the technique. Like that's he'd attack me with the sword. No, no, it's teaching you multiple things within that one kata. It's teaching
yes,
you,
yes, yes,
you understand what I'm saying? Like everybody thinks,
yes.
oh, that's the technique. So I have to, no, no. Now you can take each one of those techniques and learn to use them in different ways. And in the first kata, Shofu Gaeshi, right? um, you know, when I learned it, we came up and we just did like a shuto strike. That's initially. But there's another
Mm,
way to do it too, where the hand, as the person comes in to take your sword, you trap his hand, and this comes up and it slides and strikes the side of the neck. And that
mm,
creates a different effect in the opponent's body when you strike like that. So,
mm,
that's one of the things I found a little interesting with certain things where we're always talking about striking 90 degrees, this
mm,
kind of action. But there's
mm,
also sliding strikes and different ways to strike that creates a different result in the
mm,
opponent's body when you do it, Um, but the first time I met Shitama Sensei went to cut me with the sword, and I was doing Munagarami, the second form. I whipped the punch at his liver, and I threw it with a lot of power, but I didn't even touch him. I mean, I stopped it short, but he actually jumped. He actually was like, he went, oh, right. And I said, no, Sensei, I'll never hit you. I never hit you, right? But that's another issue I see with a lot of the current Koru Jiu-Jitsu. Um, the strikes are kind of still thought like in modern times, they're thought as like an afterthought. Like they don't really work on the striking ability. Like, can you really hit hard? Um, you know, so again, I had a karate background and other arts, right? So I could throw a pretty solid punch. Whereas a lot of
yeah.
the jiu-jitsu guys, they kind of wind up and come in with the punch and do different things like that, which I think if we saw people practicing Sosui Shitsuru 200 years ago, I think their punches would be pretty powerful. I don't think they'd I don't think their punches would be nonchalant because again, they need it for actual combat, you know. And historically, Sosui Shitsuru is founded around 1650. So it's created an era where a lot of the combat was taking place within castle grounds. So it's not so much anymore the massive battlefield combat because the Tokugawas had kind of unified things and calmed things down. Um, but it's a hardcore art. They were part of the Satsuma. So
Yeah, Fukuoka domain,
yeah,
big,
Satsuma,
strong
yeah,
domain.
Fukuoka,
Yeah,
Hakata, right? And
castle town,
yeah,
right?
yeah, and
And the family, they were the Futagami.
yeah,
They were the instructors of martial arts instructors of the domain, isn't it?
right. And the Shitama family, who have now become the inheritors of this art for a long, long time. Um, that family name goes back into Japan's earliest history. I mean, I was
Yes.
at Jodo Dojo. Yeah,
Utsunomiya. They come
yeah,
from there. And
yeah,
it's interesting for us karate guys, isn't it, that it's like the gumon, like
yeah,
similar to the
yeah, yeah, yeah,
you.
yeah. And the Hachimen Shrine is right near their dojo in Fukuoka.
Oh
'Cause
yeah,
I've been
yeah.
to the Hachimen Shrine, which you see that symbol all over that shrine. The other thing that's very close to the dojo, it's right down the street, is the Shofukuji Temple, which is one of the oldest Zen temples, if not the oldest Zen temple in Fukuoka. And the Shitama family has a long history related to that temple. I know Shusaku Shitama, that's where his remains are. They're in the temple. Because my teacher's mother took me to see her husband's resting place in the temple. So,
Oh yeah, there it is. So Futagami Masaaki, he served as a retainer of Nakagawa Hidenari 1570 to 1612, the first domain lord of the Takeda in Bungo, in present-day Takeda City in Oita Prefecture.
right,
So this is all written down. It's an amazing story. I
right.
love this stuff because it makes it so realistic. And then you have 12, 13, 14 headmasters, at least coming from there in one lineage in that place and some branch
So,
lineage.
so right now, Shitama Manzo is actually the 16th headmaster.
Oh,
So
okay.
he's the 16th because the 12th headmaster was killed in the Saigo Rebellion.
Oh, that's Satsuma Rebellion.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the 12th headmaster was killed. The 11th headmaster had retired because he'd gotten old. When the 12th headmaster was killed, the 11th headmaster came out of retirement and he became the 13th headmaster. And then Kibe
Okay.
Aogi was the 14th headmaster. He's one of the guys responsible for the kata curriculum of the Kodokan. And then Shisaku Shitama was the 15th headmaster. That's my teacher's father. And then Shitama Manzo is the 16th headmaster. So my teacher's mother, who I met and had serious in-depth conversations with, was the daughter of the 14th headmaster, the wife of the 15th headmaster, and the mother of the 16th headmaster.
So
So,
that's actually family style, right?
yeah. And when I
Wow.
met her, she was in her 70s, and she said to me, I wish I was younger. I would teach you the Kodachi techniques that my father taught me when I was younger. So Kibe Aogi had taught her how to fight with a short sword.
Oh
And she
yeah.
she had said to me, she says, if I was younger, I would teach you. But she was 70 something. She didn't want to, but she was
Oh,
nice enough to show me. You'll find this story crazy, but the one
no,
day, the one, good.
this is awesome because the we have to get into the curriculum, the syllabus, because it's so big and there are so many parts. And you said before, when you were younger, you had to translate the classical stuff into
Right,
real life,
right,
and that's possible because you got uh, joint locks,
right,
you got throws, you got strikes that are
right,
taking me apart, you got chokes, and you got pins, and
right,
that's it. And it doesn't matter how you call it. That's what people say today. Oh, I'm doing this is Wing Chun, or I'm doing this, or doing that. Why the naming then? But you have it there in the Jujutsu, and it's so sad that nobody's interested. I guess even the Japanese guys, the young people in Fukuoka, they would rather go and train Kyokushin or
Yeah, a lot of people training at the Sekiryukan now is judo. They're doing
judo.
judo.
Okay.
That's what they're doing, right?
But
Um,
it's so difficult because it's so fast, it's so big.
yeah,
And Kevin, let's talk about the syllabus, how it is divided into different classes of combat.
right,
Like you have the Koshinomawari,
right.
and I understand this correct. This is in this school particularly, it refers to the short sword, or
It does it no, it
it
refers to the katana also. Um,
oh,
you know, so
so
it's
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 EI.
it's Iai Jitsu, right?
Oh,
But it can also be short sword. Um, the um the Iai Jitsu is, the way it's unique is the way we use the waist to draw the sword. So we manipulate the blade that the sword comes out pretty fast through the manipulation of the waist. Um, Even when I was in Tokyo and I was training in Shindo Musuru Jodo, um, Matsumura Shigehiro one night decided to ask me. He knew I studied Sosuishi-ryu, and he asked me. He said the Koshino Muwari, like, is this what this means? Like, is this what the and I was showing him how they utilize the sword drawing. So a little different, right? Um, again, the Koshino Muwari too. What's interesting is you have the empty hand art, for lack of a better term, we'll just call it the jujitsu, right? And
mm,
then you have the Koshino Mawari, which is the, for lack of a better term, the Ei Jitsu, which are the modern terms people will understand, right? Um,
yes.
and they complement and they're also against each other. So one of the interesting things is some of the techniques in the jujitsu are to counter the guy trying to draw a sword and cut you, right? But then some of the techniques in the Koshin Omawari are designed to counter the guy that grabs your hand or does certain other things, and now you're countering him using swordsmanship. So it's
Mm,
interesting. It's interesting, and one of the things is this is why if you only know one aspect, if you only know the sword or you only know the jujitsu, you're really
mm,
not getting the full understanding of the art. So like the Tokyo groups, they for a long, long time only knew the sword aspect. They were not practicing. So the Matsui lineage, they only did for a long, long time. They only did the sword. They lost the jujitsu. Um,
mm.
so in Fukuoka, they've always had both the jujitsu and the Ei jitsu. So it's never been lost there. Um, and so it is important. And the jujitsu kata themselves are broken into five distinct types of kata.
All right, yes. Another sub-classification, you say, okay, this is unarmed or mostly unarmed because jujutsu, again, for the listeners, it's a modern, as Mike said, it's a modern construct,
Right,
right? We use it for everybody to get along. But the
right.
names, Koshinomawari, Kokusoku, Torite, Hakuda, there's
Ku,
so many names, even
kumiuchi,
Kenpo, right?
kumiuchi, right.
Ku-
S-
ku- uh, Kumiochi, right? Which
So
are,
no, I was going to say my teacher's mother actually brushed the kanji for me.
she did?
And it says so sui shitsuru kumiuchi koshi no moari.
I think I saw it
Yeah.
in the
Yeah, I think I took a photo of that and sent it to
yeah.
you. And so sui shitsu in the 60s they kind of took the shitsu away and made it so suishi. Um,
So
I've heard different reasons for that. But the translation is roughly Twin Rivers controlling art, right? That's a very
um,
literal, rough translation. But um, so yeah, so it's classified. The forms are classified to deal with specific things.
also
And
they're rank locked, right? So we would say rank locked, like down lock. Or people say, oh no, this is a second down kata, you cannot learn it yet, or something like that.
yeah, so I haven't experienced that here. So from my understanding is you kind of learn the system. I mean, you know,
Mhm.
I I know when we went like I never tested. I turned down offers to test, but some of my students tested. So they have Mokoroku. Um, and they changed the system where it's basically the Mokoroku system in Sosuishi-ryu is similar to the Dan system. And a lot of the arts have done that. Sugino Sensei and Katori Shinto-Ryu also issues Dan grades. Um, so I don't
Mm.
really get hung up on that. You'll get the Koru guys, will get all upset and say, "Oh, Koru, no, the grades should be like this and they shouldn't be like that. That's modern." Yeah, well, maybe not modernizing a little bit is why so many of these Koru are dying, right? Like again, you've got to
Yeah.
change a little bit to get younger people interested in doing it. But yeah, so you have the different classifications. The first set of forms in the jujitsu curriculum are the kneeling forms, where, and it's interesting. The first form, the guy tries to take your sword. So that's the very first technique you learn.
Oh,
Okay.
could you explain for the listeners? Because we're still, everybody thinks this is jujutsu, unarmed,
Right.
maybe no gi,
Right.
maybe, can you explain how the weapons are used and
So you have the short sword in your waist, right? And you're sitting in Seiza. And like I explain to people, I give them the scenario. So now you've got you're going to have a sit down and talk with this other person. Maybe this sit down was ordered by your samurai lord, whatever. You're having this meeting. And as the guy goes to sit down in Seiza in front of you, he lunges in and he grabs your collar and he grabs the
right?
handle of the sword.
All right, right.
Right. So he tries to pull the sword out and push you back so he could stab you with your own
Yeah,
sword.
right. So left hand takes the collar, right
Right.
hand takes the
Right.
choker and tries to pull out and
Right.
then kill you or something.
So like when I see a lot of the other Sosui Shitsuru groups do this technique, the guy who's attacking, he comes in with his hands open like this and he's telegraphing the attack. In my group,
Mhm.
the guy comes in and he tries to fool you. He goes to sit in Seiza and then he surprises you with the attack. The attack comes from nowhere. You think he's just going to sit down and now he attacks. You have to be able to react, grasp his wrist so he can't pull the sword out, and then you come up, you strike him, and then you throw him. And you strike him
Right.
here in this side of the neck. Right.
You do five things at once. You let
Right.
out, you lock his hand here, you
Right.
grip him hard so he
Right.
cannot
Right.
lose it anymore.
Right.
And then you go around somehow and strike
Right.
him hard enough, and then you continue. And
Right.
when you watch it, it's just whoosh and over.
Right.
There's so many details to it. That's amazing because with people today, they talk about Kutsushi and they talk about this, but you do all at the same time, like
Right.
almost
Yeah. Well,
simultaneously,
so
right?
again,
Almost.
for a beginner, everything's broken down, but as you advance, it has to be real. So like in my schools, anybody that practices Sosui Shitsu with me, the person's actually at some point going to try to take your sword. And it's usually pretty funny the first few times the person actually tries to take the sword because they take the sword. And then the person defending realizes, oh, wait a second, I have to step up my game. I'm not
Mm,
I'm not able to handle this yet, right?
mm,
Um, the other thing with the training is, the person that's doing the attack, he's going to take the fall. So he performs ukemi and takes the fall and he slaps
mm.
out. And one of the things I hear all the time is, "Oh, well, you wouldn't slap out in the street." Yeah, no kidding. The ukemi is so the person doing the technique can practice hard and fast.
Yeah,
That's why it's there.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then the final technique in that particular kata is when we throw the person to the ground, is we finish them with a strike. We strike them usually across the throat or across the
Mm,
front of the nose to finish them while they're on the ground, you know? And, obviously, like when I explain it from a self defense standpoint, the person just tried to kill you. This is a
right.
samurai martial art. This other person probably isn't walking away from this. Like, and then in future kata, we actually take the attacker's sword and stab them in the base of the skull, in effect, killing them.
Yeah.
There's no,
You
so
have this in your kata, right? At
yeah,
the end, or you get the the sword, the short sword, or the dagger, the tanto, or the yoi
Right.
dosho, whatever, and you step in right
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
But and that's I think what you said before, I think is very important about the break fall because people in karate they train break falls, right?
Right.
And the senseis they're teaching throws on the internet.
Right.
Yeah, do it like this, do it like
Right.
that. But the thing is, you need the break fall to escape the injury that happens if you don't fall, which is the jujitsu part.
Right.
And so it's not for the break fall's sake, but you have to in order to to do the technique and in order for the other guy to get
Right.
out of it without injury. And so and it's really like sometimes I wonder they don't want to understand this, right? When
Right.
they say why is he tapping out? There's nobody tapping out on the street. On
Right.
the street, you would have been gone like this, head first into the ground or something. So you would be
So,
finished.
so it's interesting you said that because so when I went to Fukuoka and I started training with Shitama Sensei, he said I had a 75% understanding. So I was like, okay, like I'm all excited because I'm thinking, okay, what's that 25% that I don't know, right? So I go there and there were a couple of actual technical things in the kata that I had not been shown correctly. Those were kind of easy fixes. Um, but then what he did was he would do the kata and then he'd say, this is this is how you really do it. And he had very broken English. And then he'd show me how I really do it. And I'd kind of look at him like, I think he could see the look on my face. And his response would be, yeah, no fall from this. No fall from this. Like one of the kata we grab the collar and we pull the person down to the mat and they fall and they break fall. Okay, so like again, you look at that, you look at this technique and you're like, oh, that technique's nothing. What's the big deal? The guy's just pulling you down. Well, first
Oh,
off, it's a bad technique. When you hit the
oh,
ground, the back of your head is going to bounce off the floor. But then
oh,
Shitama Sensei showed me where you drop the guy, you pull the guy down onto your knee. So you drive his spine onto your knee.
okay.
So that was another way of doing it. And he showed me a bunch of the joint locks where you can't do a break fall. The joint is just instantly broken, like everything's broken, right?
Mm,
And and then he talked about the fact that all the throws are in the intent is to really drive the person into onto the head, right? And
yeah.
it's interesting because in Chen Taiji, that's one of the principles we have where every throw, your intent is to throw the person on their head. That's the intent. Like there's no right. It's designed to eliminate the threat. There's no nice fall. Claudio Rigoli?
No.
So Claudio Rigoli, he's from Italy, and he's Sugino Sensei's senior student in Italy. He's senior kendo sensei. He's an author. Great guy. We've been friends for a long, long time. And so I met him in New York at one of my EI classes, probably now, 40 years ago, 38 years ago. And
Mm,
I was introduced to him as a jiu-jitsu sensei. He says, "Oh, you do jiu-jitsu? What do you do?" And I said, "Oh, I do Sosuishi-ryu." And he kind of looked at me and he goes, "That's a Koru, right?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Oh, could I come visit your dojo while I'm here?" And I said, "Sure." So he came to the dojo and we were showing him some of the kata, just showing him some of the techniques, letting him play around and try some stuff. And he looked at me and he goes, "Boy, these falls are no joke. These falls, you guys are taking some serious falls." And I said, "Yeah, but if you learn the okemi correctly, you don't get hurt. You take the fall, you learn how to do
mm,
it." And
mm,
he was surprised at the EI because he said he saw a lot of similarities with the Katori EI. And now me having done both, I agree there are some similarities there. Um, but he
mm,
even said how the ukemi we did was very, very intense. And I
mm,
I know I taught seminars in Oregon where some Brazilian jiu-jitsu guys came, and I started teaching some throwing techniques or joint throws. And they were honest. They said to me, like I started throwing them, and they said to me, "Yeah, we don't take falls like this." Like they're like, "Yeah, we
mm,
don't take falls like this." And I was like, okay, so
mm,
we'll tone it down. We'll go a little bit easier because we don't, again, a seminar, I don't want anybody
mm,
getting hurt at a seminar, right?
mm.
So, and I don't want anybody getting hurt in class. I mean, I have to be honest with you, Andreas. I mean, in all the years I'm teaching jujitsu, I mean, maybe 5 injuries
Oh,
from,
that's a big thing. That's very good.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
when you start training with us, we have a pretty strict ukemi curriculum, which I actually want to film. I want to film it and put it out there for people. Um,
Mm,
that you have to learn to fall. So you're not taking, it's a building block process where you get there. And the whole idea is where you become so confident that when you're taking these falls against these joint locks and everything, like you're not even thinking about getting hurt. You become so confident. I mean, an average jujitsu class years ago when we were all a lot younger and were taking a lot of falls, we
yeah.
would take on average probably 150 falls each in a
Oh,
in a
that's hard.
2 hour class.
Yeah, that's hard. And you
And
know what I think most people who did some judo, so they know this.
right,
When they let you do the back and forth throwing, right? The senseis, they're just waiting because they want at some point, no matter how tough, no matter how hard, no matter how muscles you have, no matter how young you are or whatever career you had, at some point you're gonna be jelly. That's it, right? So and therefore, so isn't it? And you told me you have some old guy break faults so that you
right,
can teach the older guys because break fault it's a life skill, right?
right,
At some point you're 70, you're 80, you're not able anymore, and you fall
right.
on the head, fall here, and so it's important.
Well, that was one of the things when I went to both Okinawa and Fukuoka, anytime I trained with a teacher, one of the questions that I would ask them is about teaching. I asked a lot of questions about teaching. So, I had asked Shimabuku Kichiro in Okinawa, well, Sensei,
Mhm.
what if someone older joins the dojo? And his response was, well, it's different. I said, well, what about children? It's different. What about women? It's different. My first karate
Mhm.
instructor would say a woman has to be as strong as a man, which I always thought was one of the most dumbest things I've ever heard, right? Because
Mhm.
men are different in terms of their strength. You get some men that are
Mhm.
very strong and other men that aren't. Okay, so they can't train or they can't learn. When I asked the Shitama Sensei the question about, well, Sensei, what about an older person training in jujitsu because the art's so physical? And his response was, oh, you do old man falls. And I looked at him and was like, old man falls? And he said, yeah. So then he showed me how to do it. And instead of jumping and taking the flying rollout and slapping out and hitting the mat, you just
Mhm.
do a gentle rollout
Mhm.
and you don't put that stress on your body as you get older. Now,
Mhm.
some of my guys in New York are now in their mid and late 60s. They're still doing jiu-jitsu, and some of those guys are still taking the falls, and I can still take them too. But
Mhm.
slowly they're starting to transition because, like I explained to them at that age, you take one bad fall and it sets you back a while. So you're better off
Mhm.
starting to transition to learn how to be able to keep doing the training even as you get older. And so yeah, so that's one of the things too. A lot of people see it and they look at it and go, "Oh, I can't learn that. I'll get hurt if I do that." Okay, but
Mhm.
we've experienced the opposite. If you learn to fall properly, you don't get hurt.
Yeah.
Um, and then
Yeah.
you change the way you train as you get older and you adjust it. You're not taking the
Mhm.
hard, crazy falls anymore, you know? So
That's right.
and like why do we tap? We tap because it hurts, right? And if you go too much, you injure the person. And I'll hear modern people say, well, if you stop the joint lock when the person taps, you won't follow through with the joint lock in an actual combat scenario. And you'll hear the other guy say, well, if you don't do full contact, you'll hold your punch back and you won't hit the guy in an actual combat scenario. This is such utter nonsense. I've been in hundreds of life and death encounters. I've never had any problem hitting somebody when I wanted to hit them. I never had any problem throwing someone when I wanted to throw them. If I did a joint lock,
Mm.
I followed through. This idea that, oh, if you train that way, you're going to hold back or do it's just, again, these are people that have never had to do it for real and don't understand it.
That's it. That's a problem.
Yeah,
It's completely. I cannot understand it because if you train a technique, let's say you take the Kurunfa,
right, right,
the
right,
elbow, everybody can understand it. So the finger has to be here,
right,
and all
right,
of that. So you start slow, and then my feet, the knots in it, and it doesn't work. And it takes you half an hour to take the turn, and
right,
then you try. Are you still there? Yeah, I'm there. And so after half a year, you do this in like maybe 100 milliseconds, and bam, and there it
right,
is. At this point is his non-injury point because this is your training partner and you know him.
right,
This is his non-injury point, and now he taps. But the only thing I would have to do is I
right,
would just done it, and
right,
that's the simple difference. And I think it's awful that this basic understanding of how to train locks and stuff in a responsible way because you're students.
right.
You know, I made a joke. I made a joke yesterday to a guy I was talking, and it was about how we have to stress test and everything. And I said, you know what? I don't have training partners. They're all dead. Of course, it's a joke, right?
Right, right. Well, one of the things, I discovered from being in so much actual combat was where we may feel pressure on a certain joint and tap out because it hurts on the elbow. But in combat, that same technique, the elbow may not go, the shoulder might go, or the wrist
Yeah,
might go.
yeah,
So again, like, we're tapping out because, oh, it hurts our elbow, but then you do it in combat and the guy's shoulder dislocates. And you're like, oh, wait a second. I thought that was a technique on the elbow. So one of the things you realize is, and then the other thing and I've said this before in other podcasts, that we think we know what the pain feels like.
Oh, you said that before.
No,
Yeah,
no, we don't. The pain is beyond comprehension. I mean, it's, um, I realized that early on that what we think we're feeling pain when we're tapping out is nothing. When I
yeah,
would do this on one of these criminals, I mean, the agony they were in, it was like, and I've said it, they would, you know, sometimes they'd pass out from the joint lock. Sometimes they'd, poop their pants. I mean, it's amazing the pain they're
yeah,
experiencing, and that's why
yeah.
when you learn to do them right, and again, like even me, when I first was trying to do them on criminals, they didn't work great. I had to figure it out. Again, you're doing it in the dojo against non-resistance. Now that you're doing it against guys that are bigger and stronger than you, and you got to figure it out. Once I figured it out, it became a lot easier you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not easy. That's why
It's
most modern dojo, the joint locking skills, they're okay. They're not great because they don't really take the time to figure it out.
yeah.
You know.
In karate context, it's often the case that nobody wants to be that other part. They tense up and everything, and
Right.
that's how you not get there, right?
Right.
You have to be. That's why they have all these concepts in Japan, like mutual improvement
Right.
and things like that, right? That you come to the dojo and you leave your crown outside and stuff,
Right.
and even the way that, like, look, I do it, then you do it, then I do it, then
Right.
you do it. If I do
Right.
you wrong, you do me wrong.
Right. Right.
You don't need to be afraid because you get your revenge immediately. But it's an ego thing that stopped them from being willing to do that, I believe.
Right.
So, but you cannot, from didactics here, you cannot get there to the point where you get good at the technique because you have to try out and figure out and be relaxed. Just let him do. Trust is very important.
Well.
Trust,
Right.
right? So because I give you my arm, you can destroy it. I don't
Right.
do that with random strangers or
Right.
something, right? So I have to build trust in the dojo.
Right. Well.
You Okay.
a lot of times when I'm initially teaching it, I'm constantly telling the person I'm doing the technique on to relax. Like they immediately start to tense up, and I explain to them that tension is actually what I want for real, because when you resist, that means I can really, you're giving me the power to crank the joint lock, right? But when you're initially training, I try to get the person to relax a little bit because I don't want them to feel the pain too quick, right? I want them to understand, right? But yeah, I mean, you know, I witnessed the senior Isshin-Ryu Karate sensei at a seminar say, "Oh, the joint locks don't work. Yeah, we teach them, but we just teach them so it's something extra for you to learn." And you know, I'm
Mhm.
standing there and having done joint locks, you know, probably 1,000 times on resisting criminals and know they work. And I'm saying to myself, this is the problem, right? What do you mean they don't work? And like you just said, of course, the guy in the dojo, he knows you're going to do something. So, of course, he can resist it.
Right.
So I had a guy who was senior to me in Isshin-Ryu come down to my dojo, and I started showing some joint locks. And he says to me right out in front of everyone, he said, they don't work. I said, all right. I said, you resist them as much as you want. And he goes to resist, and I made him scream, right? And he came up and he was shaking his wrist. He's like, oh my God. He goes, oh my God, right? He says, no one's ever been able to do that. I said, yeah, well, I do them for real. I know how to do them when someone's resisting. And I said to him, and I said, the only reason you can resist is because you know I'm going to do something. The criminal doesn't know I'm Mike Calandra, umpteenth degree black belt, and I've got all this training. He has no idea what's coming when I grab him, right? So this is the stupidity in a lot of modern martial arts schools is, well, I could resist that. Yeah, you could resist it because we're in a dojo and you know I'm going to do something. Well, let's go
Mhm.
to a parking lot and get some big guy to come at me, and I'm not going to tell him what I'm going to do. Okay,
Mhm.
that's a whole different area, and that's the way you should
Mhm.
train. You should train it with that idea, not well, if you did that, I'd do this. Well, how do you know I'm going to do that? You only know I'm going to do that because I just showed you the technique in the dojo. In combat, I'm not going to tell you ahead of time, "Oh yeah, when you do that to me, I'm going to do this to you." No, you have no idea what I'm going to do, you know?
Mhm.
And that's one of the pitfalls with modern martial artists. And the only reason they get away with that nonsense is they never have to do it for real. If they do it for real, they would realize, oh yeah, the guy out there, he doesn't know what I'm going to do. And I'm not going to
Mhm.
tell him what I'm going to do beforehand. And that's a big change. That's a big game changer, you know?
So, how you would say from the didactics that, for instance, you have so many scenarios, right?
Right.
The old kata, the two-person kata of jujutsu, they are scenario based. They
Right.
are like your sensei has a story to it. It's a verbal tradition, a kudan, and it's going to tell you, look, you are on a ship and you are in the medieval times somewhere in South Asia, and the guys they're not friendly, and you are going down that the planks,
Right.
and this and that happens. The moon is shining or the sun is shining or whatever. So you have all these scenarios, which I think is fantastic, even if there's sometimes maybe there's just stories, but you can it integrates, doesn't it? You have these 30, 40 kumiochi with all these stuff, with all these polymorphous actions like this, counter, 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 and
Well, the Taitoshu kata, the second set, is defensive forms against an unarmed opponent, right? So now you're seeing the Ryu uh, creating a set of kata for a new need. A new need being um, maybe not everybody's walking around with swords, or for some you're in castle grounds, maybe you're not allowed to carry a sword, right? Okay. And it's interesting. Some of the kata, the initial kata start where the guy attacks you from the front. Then
mm,
the next kata, you're walking past the guy. And as you walk
ah,
past him, he attacks you or you attack him. So that's one of the things students go, well, wait a second. We're not supposed to attack first. Okay, this is a military art. Your Lord tells you that guy you have to take out. You
yeah,
don't go, well, let's discuss this. No, you've been given a military order. Go eliminate the threat. Then the
yeah,
other one is the guy's walking next to you. And on
Yeah.
those forms, he's walking on your right side and he's grabbing your right hand, which is in most cases your sword hand. So now you
Yeah.
have to counter that. And then there's kata where you're sneaking up on the guy and taking him out from behind. And people,
All right.
when we first teach them that, they're like, "Well, you're basically, you're attacking the guy from the back. We don't do that. Why? That's not fair, right?" And we're like, "No, these are assassination techniques. This is part of your military training. They're teaching you how to sneak. In World War II, they would teach people to kill sentries, right? You don't attack them from the front. You sneak up from behind and you stick them with a knife in their kidney, right? So these are military arts, right? And then the Yotsugumi, the next set, is grappling and armor. So,
All right.
when I discussed I haven't learned the Katori Shinto-Ryu Jujutsu kata. But they're fairly simple. I've seen a bunch of them, and they're fairly simple and straightforward. And when I
Mm,
discussed it with Sugino Sensei, basically Sugino Sensei said to me, "Listen, jujitsu wasn't that important on the battlefield." He said,
mm,
"On the battlefield, if you lost your weapons and you were down to jujitsu, you were in trouble. You had a problem,
mm,
right?" And so Suishitsuru comes along later in Japanese history where it's not just about battlefield combat anymore. It's also about, castle grounds, indoor combat, that type of thing. So the Yotsugumi kata is now you're grappling in armor. The big problem I see with people that practice that is they don't practice it as though they're wearing armor. So there's
mm,
ways to do it, and do it where it feels like you're wearing armor. So it should look a little
mm,
awkward. It shouldn't be so clean as modern judo, you know. Um,
mm.
and then the Taikodachi kata are a set of, and just to mention also, the Taitoshu is 8, and then there's 8 variations. So it's the only set that has 16 actual kata,
Okay.
Taitoshu kata.
So that's a lot. So
Yeah,
for the viewer, Tai Toshu means versus empty hand,
right.
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's a bunch of varied attacks. And then we also have the Yotsugumi grappling and armor, and then Taikodachi where the person is attacking you with a short sword.
Again, with the viewer, Yotsugumi, Yotsu refers to the kind of Shikudachi or
Right,
Jigutai Dutch
right,
that
right,
sumo wrestlers have. And
right,
Gumi is grappling, like in
right,
Kumite,
right.
uh,
Yeah.
right? I,
And you'll see a lot of the techniques from the Yotsugumi you will see in the modern judo. You'll see in modern
oh,
judo. So
uh, so the school, they were included in the formulation of the judo kata,
yes.
standardized judo kata 1906 with the
Yeah.
Dainippon Budokai
Yeah.
and the Gokan.
Yeah. Kibe Aogi was at that famous group photo where all the jiu-jitsu masters are there with Jigoto Kano. Um, we also had Tomike Kenji from Tomike Aikido. He
Okay.
also spent a lot of time at the Sekirukan dojo in Fukuoka studying the jiu-jitsu techniques
Oh, you
because he
did?
was trying to expand his knowledge of the ancient jiu-jitsu and bring that into his Tomike Aikido. So
Mm,
he was looking for a little bit more combative aspect. So there's a photo actually
mm,
in the Sekirukan of Tomiki Sensei out on the floor doing some techniques.
mm,
So yeah, so he spent time at the Sekirukan. We also know that the Matsui branch of Sosui Shitsuru spent a lot of time at the Sugino dojo. They were friends,
oh,
and there's photos of uh, some of the students of Sosui Shitsuru in that time frame in the early days of the Sugino dojo, where they're actually practicing and demonstrating Sosuishi-ryu at the Sugino dojo. So
mm,
so for me, I find these connections kind of interesting because I went on to practice Katori, and it turns out there's a little bit of a connection there with the Matsui
mm,
branch, right?
mm,
And then in terms of Tamiki Aikido, it's another guy who felt there was value in the Sosui Shitsuru techniques, and went there and was learning those techniques. To see how he could possibly incorporate them in his own version of Aikido. So,
mm,
you know, and then there's a lot of schools in the States that got their start or that Sosui Shitsuru had a profound influence on a lot of the modern jujitsu schools. Um,
Really?
yeah. So Miyamaru from Antonio Pereira was a guy up in the Bronx. He founded his own style, which is pretty popular in New York.
Mm,
Fuji-Ryu, which is another modern jujitsu school. Um,
mm,
you know, so those are two. And you had other guys that trained in Sosui Shitsuru then went off and did their own things. Ronald Duncan, who created his own ninja style in New York. And again, regardless of what you think of that, it's just the idea that, because Ronald Duncan actually called me one time to thank me for keeping Sosui Shitsuru alive. So, so it's had an influence, but for some reason, the Koru, the jujitsu style itself, has kind of fallen backwards. And part of it was I don't think it was necessarily taught correctly. So
mm,
things were kind of not clear and not widely understood. It
mm,
made the style appear not as powerful as it actually is. Because I know the
mm,
first time I went out to teach in Oregon, most of the joint locking and joint lock throws and within the kata they were doing wrong. And then
mm,
when I showed them how to really do it, like one of their comments was,
mm,
"Yeah, like this technique would never work because why would I have to go with this?" And then when I did the
mm,
technique correctly, they were like, "Oh my God, you can't fight against that." And I'm like, "No, that's the whole point. When it's done correctly, it's brutal. It's not nice. It's vicious, right?" Um, so continuing with the curriculum, the last set of kata is the sonata. Sonata meaning others, and it's just
mm,
8 different techniques
mm.
against different types of attacks. And again, you're talking about the atemi, the one technique the person comes in with like a sumo style attack. So you know how the
Oh,
sumo come from the ground and they came up and try to come up underneath and knock into you and knock you to the ground. So we jump in the air and we strike them with the palms of the heels in the eye socket. So we jump straight up and do this. So when we practice the kata, we just brush the forehead.
oh,
we don't
oh,
we don't actually do the hit. The hit's too dangerous. But the actual
yeah.
hit is the palms go into the eye sockets and strike into the eyes. You could also strike in with the thumbs or the fingertips. But in the
And
practice of the kata, it's
mm,
it's done in a safe way so you don't actually hurt the person. So
it's funny that grown martial artists they still have this joke like, yeah, because it's too dangerous, you cannot do it. But they don't. They seem to underestimate the threat of these things, right? Particularly because what is danger? There are levels of danger, right? There is something you broke a fingernail. It's okay. It's not going to happen. There's something okay. It's going to hurt, but there will be a scar. There's something you're going to not recover from, right? And why is that funny? I don't understand what's so funny
well,
about it.
well again, they have this idea that you should do, like I had a police officer say to me one time, do you do full contact karate? And I said no. And he says, why not? And I said, because people would get seriously hurt. Well, I
Yeah.
think everybody should experience being knocked out. Really? Well, I have no interest in being experienced of being knocked out, right? And
Uh,
again, if you do serious karate training, there's going to be mistakes. People are going to get hit.
oh,
That happens. Okay. But
okay.
my belief is if you practice hitting each other, you're actually practicing throwing a weak strike, right? Um, if you're following through on a joint lock and causing people injury all the time, it just shows to me you have a lack of ability and a lack of control. And again, what are we doing? Like I show techniques all the time. I'll show a technique, especially when it's a younger one, like a teenager. I'll show a technique that's very dangerous, and the comment will be, "But sensei, if you did that, you could kill the guy."
Hmm.
And I go, "Yes." And they go, "Well, we're not supposed to kill." I go, "Correct. But what if it's a situation where you have to kill?" And then I give the scenario of you're home with your mom and some guy breaks into your house and now he's attacking your mother and now you have to stop him. Well, you
Hmm.
may have to take his life to save your family's life and your life.
Hmm.
No one's happy about doing that, but you may have to do it. That's the reality of real combat. Um,
Mm.
but the idea of I always find it funny because I'll get the comment on one of my videos I do. Oh, I'd like to see you do that for real. So my student, who's the person I demonstrated on, when they read the comment, they go, well, you know, invite them down and do it for them for real because you didn't do it on me for real and it hurt,
Mm.
right? In other
Mhm.
words, like, I just had my Taiji master out here and he had me teach fighting applications for the Taiji form.
Mm.
And then he watched me teach the way I taught it. And then he went out and he did the same techniques on me, demonstrated them on me. And some of this was filmed, so it'll be popping up on the channel.
Mm.
And when you see how I react, I mean, people think it's fake. It's not fake at all. Because I don't fake it for anybody. I mean, that's not in my
Mm.
DNA, right? And my
Mm.
Taiji master explained afterwards to the people that were watching who were sitting there like with their eyes like this. He goes,
Mm.
like, you're not going to practice this today because if you guys practice this the way I'm showing it on mic, every one of you is going to get hurt. He says, I can do it on Mike because Mike knows how to take it. I've been doing it with him for years and I can go very hard on Mike and he knows how to
Oh,
receive it. So he doesn't get hurt. If I
good point.
did it the way on you guys, the way I'm doing it on Mike right now, every single one of you would have your arm broken,
Oh.
right? And they all kind of just sit and look, right? And then he will demonstrate it on them, but does it easier. He's not doing it as hard, right?
Yeah.
Um, and even my own senior students who have seen me demonstrate with him for years have said to me, we don't know how you take that, sensei. And I jokingly say to them sometimes, I don't know how I
Mm.
take it sometimes. And there is the rare occasion where
Mm.
he'll do a technique on me and he thinks he hurt me. And as soon as he does it, he'll immediately stop the seminar and say, all right, everybody take a break. And he comes
Mm.
right over to me quietly and he goes, are you okay? Are you okay? He goes, I go,
Oh.
and he never has hurt me, and he's given me some shots where don't believe me, I felt it.
Mm.
He did one where I flew it into the wall, and I literally my whole body was in the air when I slammed into the wall, like hard. But I
Mm.
luckily I didn't get hurt. And my usual question to him was, "What did you do?" Like I wasn't 100% sure of how he did to me what he did. And then when he
Mm.
slows it down and shows it to me, I'm like, oh, that's what you did, right? So again, this is, I think, one of the problems with modern training is, um, oh, you should be able to practice everything hard. You should be able to do everything where you're doing it full force. No,
Mm.
it is too dangerous. Real martial arts are too dangerous. You know, and again, like the modern sport arts, there's a referee. You're in a ring, so nobody in the front row can jump in and attack you. They're checked. Nobody comes into the ring with a weapon. They don't come in with three of their friends to help them. Real martial arts. These are all the scenarios we should be dealing with. You know, um, you know. So yeah. So I think a lot of the techniques are too dangerous to practice hard in the dojo. You have to tone them down and be careful because people get really, really hurt. From doing weapons training. Can you imagine if we're following through with bow strikes? If we're following through with hitting someone with a sai? I mean, people would literally be getting killed in the dojo.
Yeah,
Like,
that's
like
a fact.
literally, people would be dying.
It is.
You know, in Katori Shinto-Ryu, if we were literally really trying, cutting, hitting the guy at the end, and
Yeah,
even with a boken, hitting him in the side of the neck. I mean, Jesus, you could kill the guy. So there has to be a control factor. I mean, it's so important.
absolutely.
You
Or
know?
safety or both. Safety and
Yeah,
both.
yeah,
And there are different levels to it, and you have to, consider gender, age, and all of these kind of things. And it seems to be too much because the circus, the MMA circus, these are all super pumped guys. They're young, they're fit, they're
right,
healthy, and do whatever you want. I don't care. In 20 years, I might suffer, but
right,
now I need the money.
right,
Let's say it like it is.
right,
That's what they do. All the
right,
fame and the fame. but that's not what normal people do, and you are responsible for your dojo guys, isn't
Right.
it?
Well, the other
So
thing too is like again, the UFC guys, boxers, right? Um, these guys are making money, they're professionals, and I get it. That's what they want to do. And like, um, I
they're
I have a
awesome. They take it.
I have a lot of
They
respect for those guys. I mean,
they have the iron body and everything.
yeah,
You
I
can
mean,
tell them nothing happens. Okay.
but I do know for a fact because I've known a lot of karate guys that decided to bring MMA into their curriculum for the dojo because they thought it would help them make money. And I know for a
Yeah.
fact that the rate of injury within the dojo goes up dramatically.
Dramatically.
You know, so again, if that's what you want to do, great. That's
Yeah.
not what I want to do. And this idea, I just find it funny, right? This idea that, oh well, you're doing that archaic karate, that archaic jujitsu, that archaic kobudo.
Yeah.
That stuff doesn't work in modern times. Well, I'm sitting here telling you, I've been in hundreds and hundreds of fights, okay? And it works. Again,
Uh,
if you train it properly. If you're not training it properly, nothing works. I mean, it's as simple as that, right? I
it is.
think a lot of the problem with the modern dojo is like if you're doing karate, you're only training against the guy who's throwing karate style attacks at you. But
That's right.
but people out in the street, that's not how they attack you. If you're
Mm,
doing jujitsu, you're only training as though you're fighting another jujitsu guy. Right?
mm,
If you're training Taiji, you're only doing push hands, which is you're fighting another Taiji guy. Like, no, you have to work. Okay, the guy's going to throw a punch at my head and try to take my head off the way a guy out there does it. Now, can
yeah.
you deal with that? And that's what real martial arts is. Like, most of my Taiji brethren never work against those kinds of attacks. In my Taiji curriculum, I do knife self-defense. I do against different types of grabs. Okay, can you use the Taiji techniques against these types of attacks? Because this is what you're going to face, right? It's the same with jujitsu. Like we would take the techniques in the jujitsu kata, and then we'd apply them against modern attacks, right? That was our self-defense curriculum. We do the same thing in karate against a guy who throws a certain type of punch, not against a karate punch, not a guy standing like this, coming in like this, right? And there's a time and place for that if you want to do it. But I think if we want these arts to remain relevant, then we have to train against the people we're expecting to fight in modern times, which is criminals, the bad guys. You know,
Mm,
in ancient times, Sosuishi-ryu was trained to fight another samurai because that's who they were going to fight. They were fighting another trained warrior. In Taiji, in early Taiji, they were training to fight other trained people, right? But in modern times, yeah, there's a chance we'll come up against somebody that has some training, but most of the people we're going to deal with are just people that are good at violence. They're good at violence
yeah.
because
Right.
they've done it, right? And most of the people we train aren't necessarily good at violence because they
Yeah.
don't do violence. They're good people, right? Um,
Yeah.
you know, so yeah, I mean, my own training method has changed dramatically from the training method that I was taught those first 10 years I trained with my first teacher. I mean, you know,
But you were young, right?
yeah, again, I didn't know any better, but as I dealt with more situations, the first time you
Mhm.
fight more than one person at a time, it
Do you
changes your
have
mindset.
do you have a constant feedback from those experiences to your technique and everything?
100%. I mean, for 10 years in my dojo in New York, it was a combat factory. I mean, there was probably 10 active duty police officers training. So the guy would walk in for karate class and say, "Hey, last night the guy came at me like this. Hey, last night the guy did this." So I said the guy would show me how he did it, and I'd say, "Okay, so that's what we worked on that night." And then 2 days later, the jujitsu class, one of the other guys would come in and say, "Hey, the guy grabbed and it might not even be attacking the police officer. Maybe it was a civilian that they robbed, and the police officer took the report and said, "Hey, the victim told me this is how the guy grabbed him." And then we'd be
Mm,
like, "Okay, we're working on that tonight." And it was like that, on a regular basis. I mean, it was all the time. So it was very intense. And the people that were active police officers in the dojo, I trained them a little different. I mean, when it was much more intense with those guys. Like
Yeah.
the training, and I tell people too, like when you had two samurai training in Sosuishi-ryu 200 years ago, they were training hard. I mean, there was no because they knew it wasn't a matter of, well, if I'm going to have to protect myself. It was when am I going to have to protect myself. They knew they were going to be in a fight to the death. So when you know that, you train differently. So that 10 years in my dojo, it was very intense. And even to this day, I'm still very intense. Like I don't have a lot of students out here, but you know, I train them as though tomorrow they're going to go out and if someone tries to hurt them, they can deal with it. I mean, that's just the way I'm hardwired. Um, you
Mm.
know, I mean, like even my kids, like when my daughter was in college, I'd go to visit her in college with my wife, and we'd always take her and a couple of her friends out to lunch or dinner, and we'd go in to sit down in the restaurant, and some of her friends would sit in certain seats, and she'd immediately say to them, "Oh, you can't sit there. My father has to sit there. He has to be able to see the door." Right.
Mm.
So when you're in the line of work I did, you develop certain habits. Those habits don't die. Like if I'm sitting in a restaurant and I'm talking to you, I'm constantly looking around. When I first walk in that restaurant and go to sit down, I scan the entire restaurant to see if there's any threats. Um,
Mm.
when I'm out in public, I'm always, looking. I mean, you just can't you,
Mm.
you don't
Information, data.
always. Yeah. So
By the way, Mike, in this connection, I found this. What you sent me. It's a Makuroku, the technical list of the
right,
Rio, 1927. And there's a part in it, it's called the Secret Matters. And this has a lot of stuff which you just said about like attentiveness at, not during a fight, not about the
right,
actual technique, but for
right,
instance, saying like how to place your sword when you're sleeping at night. What to do? Do you open it a little? Blade to there, ri- the grip to here or to there with a difference,
right,
right? So
right,
when I was thinking about it, actually, I
right,
thought, look, when the door's there, I'm sleeping here.
right,
I'm gonna take the suka there and the
right,
blade outside,
right,
so I cut like that.
right.
But that's my. I don't know if it's true, but it's
Well,
intelligent to think about it, right? And they
well,
have this.
my gun sits on my nightstand
Isn't it
when I
the
sleep,
same?
and my gun is in a position where I reach over and I immediately have the handle and can pull it, bring it right into play. Right. So going back to the jujitsu kata for a second. So the first technique you learn in the Ryu is someone tries to take your sword, your short sword. So the
Uh,
first thing they're telling you is if you're going to carry a weapon, make sure you protect it. One of the
yeah.
first things you learn in the police academy is they reinforce you have to protect the gun at all times. You don't let anybody take your firearm, right? And then you do the whole jujitsu curriculum, and the last three kata are someone tries to take your katana. So basically, you start in the system with protect your weapon at all costs, and then you
Mm,
go through the whole curriculum and you get to the end, and now they're saying,
mm.
listen,
Again.
again, do not let someone take your weapon. And I always found that fascinating, right? That they're basically reinforcing it. And that was something that was drilled into you as a police officer. Protect your weapons at all time. Protect your weapons at all time.
And
And
it happens, doesn't it?
oh
That
yeah.
people try to reach for the
Oh, we had
gun.
one of my most senior jujitsu student, Ray Santiago, has been with me about 40 years, and we were cops together. We fought side by side. So Ray's one of the few people that can say, "Oh, he's seen me in actual fight." Um, and him and a sergeant responded to a scene. I've told this story numerous times, but it's always worth telling again. And the sergeant didn't control his suspect, and Ray was dealing with a different guy, and the guy slammed the sergeant's forehead into a steel girder, and the sergeant fell on his back, and the sergeant was very out of shape, and the bad guy took his gun and pointed it at the sergeant's head. And For whatever reason, he didn't kill the sergeant, but he went upstairs and he fired rounds. He fired shots at two other cops that were up there. Luckily, they didn't get hit. They managed to get the guy. They recovered the gun. But again, this is another thing that I always preach about is fitness, right? Yeah,
Mm,
if you're not doing it for real, where you don't have the risk, well, okay, it's not as important. But if you're in that profession, you have to be physically fit because that goes a long way to you staying in the fight. And as that sergeant found out, not being physically fit, I went and interviewed the booth clerk who witnessed the whole thing afterwards because I wanted to know exactly what happened. Because again, I was always studying. Same thing. I would interview criminals in the cell. Like if I had a criminal in the cell, and once I ran him and he came back as someone, let's say he did 15 years in prison, I'd ask him. I'd say, hey, could you tell me how do they attack in prison? How does a guy
mm,
come at you with a knife in prison? How does a guy throw a punch in prison? How does he grab you in prison? And a
mm,
lot of these criminals would talk about it. Like I'd be having a full blown conversation with the guy I arrested about how they're attacking and how they're training in prison because
mm.
this is who I'm fighting, right? Right? So
Right.
learn from the guys that are how they use their violence, what techniques they do. So yeah, so yeah, it's to protect the weapon is vitally important. So
So the teachings that you find when you understand this curriculum or syllabus, which is I think the difficult part for most people, uh, the teachings they are just like timeless, isn't it? You
100%.
you translate
100%.
them.
Yeah. Yeah. So here's what I used to say. Um so I went to I was invited to the Tokyo Metropolitan Police Department, the headquarters. One of my friends made a visit arrangement for me. I went there and I did some Jodo with the two Jodo police instructors. So my friend Imai Norio, we've been friends forever. He's after we did Jodo, he's telling them my martial arts background, my resume. And I hear him say a whole bunch of different things, and then he mentions two things. He says, I'm Shodan in Kendo, which I'm not, right? And then he says, I do Taiho Jitsu.
Right.
So these are the police instructors that are responsible for teaching Taiho Jitsu, these two guys. And they go, Taiho Jitsu? He does our Taiho Jitsu? And Imai goes, no, no, no. He made his own Taiho Jitsu. So they wanted to see it. So I said, okay. So I grabbed the guy's wrist as though I was going to place him in handcuffs, and he immediately started to resist. And I put the instructor down and I got him in a hold down. And one of the hold downs is from the fourth kata in Sosuishi-ryu.
Mm,
Okay. And I
mm,
immediately handcuffed him. And he gets up and he goes, could I try that again? And I said, sure. And as soon as I grabbed him, he went to resist fully, and I put him down and I put him in the third hold down. That's from the third kata in Sosuishi-ryu. And he got
mm.
up and he goes, Chotomate, Chotomate. And he runs off. And he said something else in Japanese. And I look at Imai, and Imai goes, he wants to get a video camera. He wants to film the
Yeah.
techniques.
Chotomat is just a moment, just
Just
a
a moment,
moment.
yeah. And he couldn't find the video camera. So he didn't
Ah,
get to film the techniques. But
that's
they
awesome.
they asked Imai, and Imai said to him, Imai jokingly said to them, he does our martial arts better than we do. And that's one of the differences when you do it for real, you really understand the technique at a very deep level, right? And what I came to realize is if I was taking a prisoner on the battlefield in 1700, right? And so I could ransom that prisoner to another samurai lord, right? Well, getting a guy under control and placing him in handcuffs is no different. It's still the same, right?
Mm,
And that's why eventually I created another set of kata that's all about handcuffing people. And I demonstrated
mm,
that set of kata to Shitama Sensei in Fukuoka, and he was shocked. He said to me, "Those are all techniques from Sosui Shitsuru." And I was like, Yeah, I just am applying them in a modern context. He goes, oh, this is very good, Michael, right? And I was like, oh, thanks, Sensei. And then I created another set of kata against a club, knife, and gun. And
Mm,
that set of kata has 16 techniques. And I'm not saying that they're an
mm,
official part of Sosuishi-ryu because they're not. They're just
mm,
in my syllabus, I teach them because again, I want the modern student to drill against the modern weapons they're going to face. Um, and I want the police officers in the dojo to become so proficient at the cuffing techniques. And I would do 4 hour seminars for cops. And I would get calls 2 weeks later and they would say to me, how come the techniques you showed us in 4 hours work and the ones we worked on 6 months in the police academy don't? And I was like,
mm,
well, because I designed the techniques against a resisting opponent. In the police academy, it's so basic. They're trying to give you, most of these guys don't have any training, they have no knowledge of anything. And even a
mm,
lot of the police academy instructors, to be honest, their level of ability isn't very high. They don't have a high level of ability, a lot of them. So,
mm,
you know, so I created those handcuffing techniques the way the real fighting techniques were created, which is I
mm,
did the techniques first on the criminal. I
mm,
figured them out for real against real situations. And then
mm.
I created those two-man kata based on
Oh,
those
oh,
real
oh, oh,
scenarios that I dealt with.
okay.
So
Oh, yeah.
when I see modern guys are making up kata in the dojo, I don't have a problem with it. But again, if they don't come from that guy say, well, a guy attacked me like this, so that's why I made that kata. Okay, I'm like, good, that's a
Mm,
good idea.
mm,
But if you're just making the kata to make kata, that's okay. But don't tell me that you know that those have been pressure tested, that those techniques you know are going to work because you haven't done it for real. That's why when I attend a seminar and I hear an instructor say something to the effect of, this technique works every time. Now, if I'm at that seminar and that instructor makes that claim, I immediately go like this. I raise my hand.
mm,
And when he calls on me, I say, well, you say that technique works every time. And he says, yeah. And I'm going to say, well, how do you know that?
mm.
Like, have you done it multiple times for real in a real situation? Because there's no technique that works every time. I could tell you that from combat. There is no technique that works every time. Because if there was, we'd only have to do that technique. We wouldn't have to worry about all these other ones, you know? So we've been going long here, Andreas. We're going on almost 2 hours. So we should probably,
That's too long. But I just wait. I have this because you said you created kata against stick in this, and the technical list has kata against everything. Methods of cutting in Dark Knight, methods of a shield against the shield. Someone has a staff engagement that's bow,
right.
sickle, that's kama, and so on. So that's the right idea, right? That's
Yeah.
that mindset that you need to have, right? So
Yeah.
so wrapping it up because we're going too long. Triangulation, communication first, then jujutsu, and and handcuff. Something something like that, right?
Right.
Be intelligent. We think of all kinds of things. Have your eyes open and be open to communication because that solves so much. If you don't have a gun, a smile brings you farthest.
Right.
Probably these kind of things, isn't it?
Right. Yeah. I
Full
mean,
stop.
look, I always teach avoid conflict at all costs. Like, if you can walk away, walk away. But
Uh,
there are going to be times when you can't walk away. And if you can't walk away and a person's going to try to do you physical harm, well, you have to be able to stop them. You have to be able to
right.
protect yourself for real. So yeah, avoid the conflict, you know, and hopefully you never have to use it for real and we just have fun in the dojo training and being physical and healthy and learning these martial arts we love. But in the event we need it, we want it to be there, you know? So,
Right. You want to get home safe
yeah,
and
yeah,
perfect.
yeah. So, listen, this was fun.
Oh man, it was tough being on
I,
the other side, but you
so,
have so much to tell. It's easy to listen, actually.
right. Yeah. Yeah. So I listen, I enjoyed it. It's fun. Now what's going to happen is one of the other guys is going to say, "Hey, what about me interviewing you?" And I'll have to do a couple more of these, you know. But yeah, so it was
Yeah.
this is really good. So
So you get all sorts of perspectives, right?
yeah,
Because different questions, different perspective, different
yeah,
answers.
yeah.
Hey, thank you so much.
Thank
Uh,
you.
best regards to Arizona.
And listen, your book will be out soon, I think.
I'm working on it.
Okay.
It's finished, but
Okay.
I don't know yet when to do it. I have to make one more run over.
Okay.
And I think the Kyushu guys, they're already awakened. There's coming something.
Right.
And yeah,
So
because
so
they got,
so once that's out, we'll be talking again.
all right. I'll be sending you one, okay?
All right. Thanks. I appreciate it. All right, Andreas. Take care.
Have a good Sunday.
All right. You too.
Ciao,
All
my
right. Bye.
sensei, okay? Bye bye.
So I hope you enjoyed that reversal. Andreas Quast interviewing me for the podcast. Again, 150th episode. Couldn't do it without you guys that are very interested for some reason in what I have to say. There'll be more in the future. Planning another live class coming up. Maybe, I don't know about March, maybe the month after that, early April, we'll do another one. So if you have ideas for a live class, please shoot me your suggestions. And again, please click that like. Click it. It's right there in front of you. Just click it. Share, subscribe. All right. Consider becoming a monthly member. All right. Appreciate you all. See you in the next episode, the 151st. Okay. Again, getting crazy. All right. And take care. And thanks for watching.